as of right now, we're a really strong point into this current arc. We have the general layout of the characters who are going to be fighting, the general situations that the characters are all set up in as, and we know for the most part, obviously, the roster of enemies. It seems that Ignia has sensed that there's something going on, and some power he's sensed that he's going to check out that could be some strange new addition into what's going on. But as of right now, I really think that we have a strong enough spot where we can ground kind of position and say, okay, what's the arc looking at right now? What are we looking at for the future? And how is like the verse and like the characters and whatnot, how are they all entangled into ongoing events, and to like how do these events, what do they do for the story? So I've mentioned before that I think one of the things that is very apparent with Mishima is you can tell how much he cares about a character with how much he shows sides to them, and does things that kind of just show an extensive amount of just kind of thought into the character relatively early, I would say. Like, there's not a lot of times I feel like when a character is introduced that they like that you can't tell relatively early into their display of like the characters that he ends up clearly putting more time into. Like, for instance, you have someone like, say, Nineheart or Wall, or Agil actually has a little bit of extra but of lore, but then you compare him to like Brandish, it's not even close, like the amount of just existence in the story across all fields. But when you look right now and you see everything that's going on with kind of just the general situation with the dragon gods kind of all just being active, you look at everything like what the characters are doing, and you see where everything is at, it's very clear to me that Ignia is set up to have much more of these kind of set layers. And when you looked at the other dragon gods, I think it's kind of hard with Viernes, because he was set up to be more of, I'm gonna not have a lot of stuff here because I'm literally gonna be in the next arc, so he just gonna fight and not have a lot of dialogue is my belief. If he somehow doesn't have cool stuff go on when he shows back up, I don't know. I gotta fix this picture before I put it up. I just noticed like there's like 2 spots specifically in this picture I really need to adjust on the thumbnail before I upload this video. But with Ignia's gotten a lot from, like, honestly, I would say since his real return after he was introduced. Because once he was introduced, we got obviously his general, like, I'm Ignia's real son, talking about how he wants to fight Natsu to the death, burn the world down in their battle, and just generally give us what he's about. And then characters, with Mercphobia just giving us information on Ignia and stuff. We have like, okay, well, this character, this is what we know about him. But we also have everything that is from Ignia and Natsu and stuff that connects to him. We obviously have stuff with Acnologia that says, okay, that tells us stuff that led into his backstory. Obviously why he, it makes sense of why Ignia is so different. We don't know of the points in his backstory that got him to where he's at now, but it makes sense, the idea of this dragon who probably had to either live as a human to avoid Acnologia and then kind of adjusted, or some way, shape, or form that led him up to this point. It's like, okay, we know that Acnologia's efforts in his big genocide campaign led to Ignia in the situations that he was in. So you can say like, okay, we have stuff from just raw lore that we can kind of really go into knowing about him. We just don't know a lot of the stuff in between these points that led up to the current character. But when you have stuff that is constantly is given to us, like directly that completely just shows a whole new aspect of Ignia, I think that how many times we've had that since he came back is one of the reasons that he's so he's so like enticing of a character, and he has such a level of presence and interest in the fandom, and I think that's extremely valuable within 100 Years Quest. And it's similar to like Wed with his mask, just a character having a mask. People were super enthralled about figuring out who exactly he was. Even, you know, it ended up being a character we hadn't seen, but then on the reveal of it, it was like, okay, well, that's something that nobody saw coming. I don't think anybody saw Wed being Ignia's son as a plot twist. But that being another thing we'll talk about in a minute. But with that, it's like, okay, well, what exactly else is going on? Okay, he shows up, during the Dogre Labyrinth, you know, obviously showing up, just crashing the place, and then goes into everything with the heart. And then you find out so with Dogremag, and not only is this like, you know, this cool plot twist, I'm hoping that Dogremag is what he's going to find, but I mean, we'll see. If he, I'm really hoping to see that Dogremag's love, because I actually really liked him, and I would love to see just more interactions with him, especially with Ignia. But like the fact that Ignia is like, I actually do consider somebody a friend, one person I would consider a friend, and it's Dogremag. And I just liked that a lot, because it immediately added an extra side of him that we hadn't seen or really thought of. Because it was like one of the weird things about Ignia was like kind of like figuring out what are the characters that are going to be kind of like in his corner. With Acnologi, it was hard because he was obviously going to be more always himself, just by himself. Like you would have to have something where he kind of is like Alderaan, where he creates his own crew. That's the only way I feel like Acnologi could have ever had his own squad. But with Ignia, there was like always these different ways that like you could have worked it, and here obviously we're seeing it, and it's like, just again, it's with Wed. Wed is a really good example too, because like again, every time he comes back, he does, oh, he's running a dark guild. Oh, he's gonna turn all his guild members that are, he's like goes out of his way to get fire magic using humans to turn them into dragons and just envelop the world in the dragon race. Like he's just going crazy. He's like, hey, Dragon King Festival, guess the fuck what? We're doing it again, and this time it's for real. Like he's just going out of his way to do stuff that's crazy. But that's what I mean when you kind of look at his character versus, say, Alderaan. I like Alderaan. Alderaan was a cool character. He was good at his job. He was just the idea of him at his core. He's like this old, really powerful, just dragon who's all kept in his ways. Like I said, one of the big things about Alderaan and any of the dragon gods, but I think Alderaan most of all. You can tell a lot just from his humanoid form, because they're humanoid forms they choose to look like. So he chooses to literally give himself a crown. So he's clearly full of himself. And obviously it's like, okay, it literally ego and racism, that's his fuel. That is this guy's whole thing. And then you look at Viernes. We don't know exactly enough about Viernes just because we didn't get him in depth. Again, hopefully Gray, be my guy. Get us that lore. And then with Mercphobia was just like, hey man, I kind of don't want to do this. Like, I'm trying to just live life now. And then Selene was just doing her own crazy thing. But with Ignia is just like, he's moving the areas that I don't think anybody really was anticipating, all in different spots. And I think that's really important, because when you look at all the stuff that we have connected to him and the stuff that he's doing and the stuff he's trying to accomplish, it shows that there's a very large kind of, just I'm trying to think of, I was gonna say shelf, but I don't think it's just a very large like upcoming like wave, essentially. Like we're gonna just keep getting these big avalanches of information and stuff on Ignia, and you know, obviously eventually leading up to the fight. But I think that just again, the reason for it is it's because, one, obviously this character is going to be around for always, going to be important, but it's in a way to show that like the amount of influence he clearly not only was going to have, but clearly does have in his reach that he has. And I think that one of the reasons that we're going to see like the full effect on that, and we're seeing it literally right now, because unlike so many other big villains in any series, when a character shows up and starts monologuing and revealing things, Ignia just said, no, start the plan up. Yeah, we're not waiting 2 volumes to learn lore or talk or skirmish and me get distracted so we can't do this, or you two get teleported somewhere and I gotta find you. Just do it up. And he, you know, stuff gotta happen. And with that, it makes me think that his portion of his plans are going to succeed. I think he is going to, where he is going to stop is going to be just short of, you know, his plan to burn the world down, his fight with Natsu. Obviously, I think Natsu's going to stop him at that point. But I just don't see, like, Ignia is going to, like, every single time that Ignia is going to press an area, I think until then, he is going to succeed. He is going to look at his spot. We're going to have something in the series. Like, imagine he's going to go fight Eleftheria. He goes and has a fight with Eleftheria. We get some cool skirmish. It's like, okay, cool. He's going to have a fight with Eleftheria. Let's see what it's like. You know, I imagine it would just be kind of like Eleftheria doing lots of crazy spells and Ignia just burning and tanking them and attacking him. Just the idea of it sounds really awesome. But at the end of it, he would be like, all right, now what I really came here to do. And he goes to that big mural thing that Eleftheria has on the wall. And maybe he like rips like that jewel out of it and it starts to open or something. Something crazy with it that like the people like me that have always been like looking at it being like, there's something strange about that thing. And there's going to be like a few other guys that are like sitting somewhere and they're going to remember their theory from 5 years ago. And they're like, oh shit, it's time. Something like that. Like every single time that he ends up including himself into an event, he takes the event and he like completely says, all right, this is cool and all, but he pulls out some like if you think of it like a meal, he's just shoving ghost peppers and shit in there, and he's like, guys, come on, like it's gonna be even better this time. It's funny because in a lot of ways, and this is just one of the things I kind of want to close out on, because he's done so much to already kind of shift and move and stuff in the story and have so much influence already. He feels to me like kind of like how Acnologia was, because Acnologia is a character, he every single time that he showed up, essentially he was going to command the scene and events were going to kind of orbit around him. He is the decider of in reality at the end of the day of what was going to happen whenever he showed up in an arc. And that's kind of how Igni is. But it's also with like change and impact. But instead of like where Acnologia, every time Acnologia would show up, like you would essentially, you would have a time skip and like events would go crazy. Because if you really think about it, Sirius Island, time skip. Tartaros, after that, time skip. After Alfred's, time skip. Acnologia literally is like, you have to take a time skip rest after fighting me. I am that serious. With Ignia, it's kind of like whenever he shows up, though, he just kind of like reveals new stuff in the story, big things and events and just backstory. He's like that, but instead of like just like, oh yeah, his hacks is more of lore stuff instead of that. He's like Xerath in that order, where maybe like that'll be Ferris. Ferris is gonna be like, I'm gonna shift events where we're gonna have a time skip. We'll reverse it, and because I've always thought to a degree that like with Ignia, but now it kind of feels like maybe that'll be the little bit with Ferris, is like I wish like we got more backstory, obviously, in time with Acnologia, but it was kind of hard to do when he was so high above everyone. And then obviously like Mishima and them added stuff in the anime. But with that, it's like, okay, well, what was with Xerath? I wish the only thing with Xerath I wish we would have seen more of, like if I would say something for certain, besides like his descent, like a detailed like story watching him descent into madness, because that would have been cool. But otherwise, just seeing like him use his abilities, like how many abilities he has. And that's what I feel like Ignia is like the swap in, like, because I've always personally had, I know I said like I was gonna wrap, this is my actual wrap up. I've always had my theory that Mishima intentionally, like he wanted to get his stuff all going, so he rushed the initial idea of the ending of where kind of Fairy Tail. It's not like, I think that he like had a few choices. He was like, okay, I got 2 areas really left. I can either make Irene's fight short or August's fight a little shorter. She's like, okay, I gotta stick with Irene, though August is really cool, Irene is more important for the lore of the story. And then did essentially the same thing with Acnologia and Xerath. And then in this situation, he's like, because then I think that's why he switched over to have everything set up with 100 Years Quest, because 100 Years Quest is weird enough, it's like it's technically in a different IP, so they switched with the studios and they did extra stuff, but it did kind of 50-50 on it. We'll see. Maybe they'll fix stuff up in the Blu-ray and I'll be happy. But it was in a way that it was like how Mishima kind of like needed to kind of how is he gonna like use the ideas and stuff that he had if he had to kind of like wrap up the story within a finite amount of time, but he was already planning to continue? Because he talked about how in Tartaros, at the time of Tartaros, Alvarez was going to be the last arc, but while he was writing Alvarez, he's like, no, there's more stuff to write. I still have some stuff to do, because Mishima does stuff like that all the time. He literally talked about that in Dead Rock too. He was planning it to be way shorter, and then he's like, I actually don't know how long I might make this. I'm actually enjoying writing this, and there's stuff that I keep coming up with. He did a lot with Fairy Tail, and then obviously with relatively of his stories. But with this situation too, it's like I think he decided to kind of reset things. Like, okay, what I was going to do with acting Logi, okay, how can I rework this into a new character? Ignia. Okay, and then bam, Ferris, hopefully with Bestia, you know, fingers crossed, she is going to pop up and start throwing crazy spells, black magic spells all over the place, so that I can actually see them and actually witness spells that you still actually can say Xerath has, because unless there's anything that somebody created themselves, Xerath would have them, since we know he mastered black magic specifically, and he has complete, you know, mastery over the entire branch of black magic. So it's something that we can look at and say, okay, it's an interesting coincidence, but at the same time, it's like Ignia's been proven. Everybody that I think has ever had any negative opinions on him wrong. I still remember at the start when they're just talking about how Natsu's gonna beat him, and like the next time he sees him, and like he just beats the shit out of everybody every single time he shows up. He's had no real competition, I feel. I think the first time he really was getting any fight was with Celine, but I don't think he would have lost that, because like the thing is, I feel like him versus Celine, I feel like out of either of them, this is my secret extra last person. If you stayed to the end, you'll know my situation with Celine and Ignia. I think if Celine and Ignia fought, like, again, and it was just all the way out, even though they're equal, just based on Ignia's, again, his, you know, being Igniel's son, he's clearly got a very powerful bloodline, being younger. And I think personally, like when you look at it, like Ignia seems to take fighting more seriously, and I'm guessing train to a degree, who knows, but Celine does not, from what we've seen. Again, at least to what we know, she doesn't seem like that kind of person. It seems more of she's just a very powerful dragon. Dragons get more powerful as they age, so there's a lot of factors in, obviously talent and whatnot. But he just seems like somebody who would be able to get that kind of like, I got stronger in the fight, and even if Celine got stronger in the fight, he would get stronger at a like better rate, so he would, you know, obviously be able to overtake it at the end. But yeah, so Ignia, I think Ignia right now is really showing a lot for the story, doing a lot of impact on just general events obviously going on, and I just don't really see like how he's going to stop doing this essentially until Natsu beats him and ends him. Because until then, I mean, this guy, I really genuinely think that he's going to get the Fairy Tail world restocked with dragons. And then whenever we get the next gen series, the dragons are going to be normal in the world again. So otherwise, tell me your thoughts about Ignia so far. Tell me your thoughts about his character. Again, I think right now it's like just getting stuff with Wed and potentially Ig and Bestia. I'm going to assume until proven otherwise, until we get a otherwise statement for the manga, just because I feel like that can't be a coincidence. But other than that, yeah, tell me your thoughts are about everything and where you think Ignia is going to go next. Who do you think he's going to go find? What powers he's searching for? I'm hoping it's Dogromag. Otherwise, is it like somehow Acnologia's arm re-going that Ferris has somewhere? Until then, talk to you guys later. Bye.